So thank you for coming out. Forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, so a few announcements for upcoming events. One of the biggest upcoming events we have coming up is Pi Texas. It's coming up in September 25th. There's still a call for proposals out there, so you go to python.org. pytexas.org, sorry. You can go to python.org too. It's a good website, but it probably doesn't have anything about Pi Texas. Also, next month is July, which means Julython is right around the corner. So you should get your projects all set up, ready to go. It's in test mode right now, so which means you can go in and register your project and start committing, and you'll see scores to your project. So go check it out. It's julython.org. If you have any questions, come find me. And the rest, we have a talk by Justin, but first, our lovely sponsors, Calavista Software. David from Calavista Software is going to talk about everything cool that they're doing, and thank him for the beer and all the lovely food.
All right, so as he mentioned, I'm at Calavista Software. I'm the chief architect there, and we do custom software development. So people come to us with an idea on a napkin or a PowerPoint deck, and we do it for them. And we do it on time, on budget, more than 90% of the time, which is cool, to deliver software. So I'm here to tell you why you should come work at Calavista. So why every one of you should take one of these cards, send me a resume, and come work. So first reason is, we've been around for 14 years, and we've been doing Python for 14 years. We like Python. So, first thing ever done at Calavista was written in Python. So, second reason is, we put a lot of thought into the software process. So that first project written in Python was actually a continuous delivery tool. Nobody called it continuous delivery at the time. And it was so new and radical. We actually have patents in that, which we don't enforce because we want everybody to do good software delivery and continuous delivery. So we put a lot of thought into making it easy for developers to write good code. So we work with contractors and other people, partners, and they like working on our projects because they know that when they start a project, everything will be set up the right way. So we'll have, these days, Jenkins and Jira and GitHub and everything set up with the test servers. And so they commit, it gets deployed, everything happens automatically, make it easy for developers. And the last reason you should take one of these cards and come work for Calavista is about the developer environment. Not the tools, but where you're working. So our tagline is software development without the drama. So you've all been on dramatic software projects where there's yelling and crying and crunch time and late night pizza and work another few nights. We find that doesn't work very well. We don't like that. So we prefer developing in an agile manner. Again, talking to the longevity of how long Calavista's been doing this, we were there to help start Agile Austin, and we're still sponsors of it because we believe in that methodical way of delivering software, where it's iterative and people aren't in a heroic mode. We don't like doing heroics. So if that sounds interesting to you, you like Python, you like working in a company that thinks deeply about how to deliver software properly, and you like a non-heroic environment, then you should come work for us. Thanks.
All right, thank you, David. All right, next up, I believe, yeah, he was earlier. So, we're gonna have Justin from WP Engine. Using the top. There's a small little company here.
Do you have a retina?
Do some WordPress.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I think I could just. Oh, no. Easy. Look, you have there right now. Hey.
Spend so much time setting this up, and then
Here if you need it.
I may need it.
Promise of sweet, sweet electrons.
Co-working. Let's just try this one more time.
There you go.
Okay, bear with me while I set this up. Everything is hosed. Can we just...
Easier to plug, or it's just like the desktops?
No, it's just it lost all its desktops. And so.
Oh, it's not good. Okay.
So yeah, after Justin's done with his talk here, if anybody wants to give a little lightning talk, you want to stand up and talk about something they've been working on, or if you have a little mini presentation.
Or tell jokes.
Or tell jokes. And if you have good jokes right now, we could really use them. Because I am not funny. At all. Come on.
I was
Save
so
me,
close.
Justin.
I was so
I'm
close.
dying here.
Hey, Ryan knows jokes.
Ryan.
Okay, we're good. We're good.
All right. Thank you. Now for our evening's event.
All right, sorry about that, but thanks for bearing with me. Yeah, so I'm Justin Harris. I work at AWPUG Engine. There's several of us here. I'm going to be talking about the Django REST framework. So who's into REST APIs? Anyone? Oh man, so many people. Okay, great. Well, then this is a great talk for you. Okay, before I kind of dive into... Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of this. Dismiss. So yeah, before I kind of dive into all the specifics, just a little background about myself. I've been doing this professionally for over 12 years. I've been in Austin for over 3. I haven't done just Python stuff, so I've kind of been all over the map in terms of technology, but currently doing a lot of microservice stuff in Python. Also, you may wonder why people from WP Engine are giving a talk at a Python meetup. We do a lot of WordPress stuff, and there is a lot of PHP, but there's actually a lot more to it than that. We make pretty heavy use of Python, so if you're interested in that, feel free to find, like I said, there's several of us here, so find us and talk to us. Okay, so here are a few assumptions about maybe what you know or are curious about before I kind of dig into the details. That you're somewhat familiar with Python. There's going to be a fair amount of code shown. You're familiar with Django and at least know like what REST and what RESTful APIs are generally. But if you don't, that's okay. Just feel free to interrupt or raise your hand or whatever and ask questions during this. Don't bother to wait till the end. Okay, so what is the Django REST framework? This is just directly from their homepage, which sounds great and amazing, but like, what is it actually? This is kind of marketing stuff. Okay, so here are a lot of actually what is provided by the Django REST framework. So I guess generally, for anyone who's not familiar, Django REST framework is kind of a layer on top of Django for actually like a tool chain for writing APIs, RESTful APIs. So here's a lot of the things that it provides. This was kind of my list that I threw together. I'm going to go into deeper detail about some of them and some of them not so much, but I'll kind of just walk down the list a little bit. So serializers are essentially a way to either take an object, like a model object from the database, and actually turn it into something that can be serialized across the wire. But it doesn't actually have to be a database model. It could be anything. It could actually be just something that stands on its own. But some way to, in a way that's independent of a format like XML, JSON, YAML, to define validation rules as well as format. Have a sip of beer. So it also handles content negotiation, which I kind of alluded to, as well as validation. So making sure the format coming in adheres to certain standards. Django itself provides class-based views, but the framework actually provides a little bit more that's kind of tailored more towards RESTful APIs, and can also aggregate them into what they call view sets. So it's a way of actually having several views together with related URLs that kind of handle a particular resource as a unit. Routers I'll dig into a little bit, which is just how to map URLs to views. They also provide this browsable API, which is very cool. I'll do a bit of a demo of that, which is just a generated web page for your API, mainly for debugging, but it's very handy. It can do request throttling and versioning. I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, so here, this is kind of the bulk of what the framework provides, the views and the serializers. The green pieces are just kind of stock Django, and the red is what the Django REST framework provides. It has more stuff than that, but that's really the kind of meat of it. You can think of serializers kind of like templates, but it's really just for, like I said, JSON or XML. So I guess let's build an API. Does anyone here like beer? Only like 4 people? Are you guys in the right place? Okay. Okay, so we're going to use the framework to build a beer API. So it's going to do 2 things. You're going to create a catalog of beers, and then we're going to have an endpoint to actually order some beer. And this is what it's going to look like. Is this, can you guys see this okay?
Would you amplify it, magnify it to make it bigger?
I don't know. I don't know if I can.
Command plus work?
Let's try it. Hang on. Oh, that doesn't work at all.
Command flip.
Oh, man.
Don't worry about it.
Sorry. I can talk through it. So this is pretty, I mean, for anyone who's kind of either worked with a RESTful API or designed them, this is like pretty standard CRUD.
That's fine.
So you can get a list of beers. You can add to the list by posting to it. You can get a particular beer by its ID. And you can update it several ways. Put is if you want to replace the whole thing. Patch if you want to pick parts of the field, partial update. Delete one. And then we're also going to have another endpoint to create an order so that you can get beer delivered. I don't know how much we have there. Maybe we're out. Okay, so we'll kind of just start at the bottom level, which is the model. So we'll design a a database model for the beer type. Yeah, so you guys can look over there as well if that's easier. This is very simplified, obviously, but so it's just going to have a name, an ABV, and a style. The style comes from this list here, and I'll give you a link to the GitHub site. I've actually got all of this code up on GitHub, so you can actually play around with it. So there's more to it than that, but pretty basic. Basic model, 3 fields. So this is what happens when you actually kind of, again, this is stock Django models, so excuse me for a second. That command plus was making mine bigger, not that, but anyways. Okay, so here's the table that's generated. Again, nothing specific to the REST framework. This is just Django migrations. So this is what's produced. I'm using SQLite for this example, but pick your database of choice. So now that we've got our model, let's go kind of one layer up, and that is the serializer. So this is what it looks like. Very straightforward. So this is using what's called a hyperlinked model serializer. So this is kind of a lot of the Django REST framework magic, where all you really need to do is specify the model that you want to reference, and this will create like a one-for-one field with the model that can serialize it. So it's going to look at all the restrictions around the database and come up with comparable validation rules. So it's very tightly coupled to your database model. You can do some additional things here to say, okay, well, I'm not interested in actually serializing these fields. These I want to keep private to the database, and it can handle all that just fine. The hyperlinked model piece of it is, so the model piece of it is actually the linking with the database model. The hyperlink piece is how it represents identifiers. So the stock way to do it is just to say, okay, ID, here's the ID. The hyperlink piece can actually generate the full URL that'll identify the model. So this is actually the equivalent of this code. So you can see here, we're not using a model serializer. We're actually just using a base serializer. The declaration looks really similar to how you would define a Django model. These different fields are what's provided by the framework. So there's a character field, decimal field, choice field, as well as the hyperlink identity field. We good so far? Everyone cool? All right.
Do you have a demo?
What's that?
Will you demo it?
Yeah. Yeah. But once I kind of get all the layers, I'll kind of click around on it so you can see. So, all right. So now that we've got the model piece and the serializer piece, that's actually enough to kind of play around with how the validation part of it works. So you can instantiate a new one of these serializers, give it some data. This is actually what's done by some of the view layer when you actually have a basically a dictionary that could be a JSON blob that's posted. It would actually just create a new one of these. You can ask it if it's valid. In this case, I said that the style was amazing for PBR, which is false. And then you can see that it actually kicked back the errors there. I omitted ABV altogether. I'd mark that as a required field. You can mark fields as not being required, in which case it will be fine. But you can see how the basics of how validation works with the serializer. Okay, so this is the next layer up, which is creating a view set. And so Django REST framework provides a lot of a pretty broad, I should say a pretty deep class hierarchy for how they build up, how to construct this stuff. So using these view sets are kind of the highest level. And you can see here there's 2 lines of code, right? So here's the query set to use to actually translate all of the incoming URL requests into database queries, and the serializer to use, going both in and out. So this is going to work for all of those URLs that I highlighted, getting the list, getting a single entry, creating, deleting, etc. It'll set all of that up. Okay, so yeah, so here's kind of what that translates to. Under the hood, you can see the superclass here is the model view set, and this is what that provides. So this is very similar to like a Rails controller, if anyone's used that, or I think there's several other patterns for the same kind of HTTP verb and URL to action mapping. Is this good? Dane, do you have a question, or you just keep your hand down, please, if you don't mind. Okay, so all right, to tie it all together, we have to actually set the URL patterns for the Django app. The REST framework, again, provides this default router, and we register that view set that we just defined. And we give it a name, which is a string, which actually sets up what that base URL is. It also creates what the names of those views, which the view set defines. And you'll see how you can refer to those internally in a later slide. But here's kind of, again, what that mapping looks like from URL to the method in that view set. I don't know why I use 5 for all of these, but you get the idea.
Should use 6.
That would be better. That'd be one more than 5.
6.
Okay, here is where things get crazy, because I'm going to try to demo this. Let's set this down. Oh, jeez. Just a sec. Hey, there we go. All right. All right, so I've got this up and running. I will have this up and running. Okay, so running the local server, here's just the /beers URL that's set up in the router. I've kind of gone ahead and pre-populated some entries here, but you can see everything that you get out of the box. So again, we're using URL as the identifier for each one of these. name ABV style. You can see that there's actually also built-in pagination. So the default pagination is 10 entries per page. And you can just click through. The JSON includes total count, next and previous links. You can see that down at the bottom here, it actually generates a form with all of the same info. So we can add some more of this, some more entries. If we don't, and just post up blank, you can see here, we posted the beers, it kicks back a 400. And then there's validation errors that all came out of that serializer piece. So I just had a blank name and a blank ABV.
These are the same URLs, you're just sending a different content type, right?
Yeah, so the content type here in this case is going to be just form encoded. But yeah, this same thing will work here with application JSON. You can actually even select it. So we can actually, let's try it that way. But there actually are ways to plug in content negotiation. So out of the box, this is kind of just vanilla Django REST framework. So they don't support XML, but that's just a separate, it's just a separate library that you can, it's pretty easy to configure. I don't think many people write new frameworks with XML these days or new APIs, but if you need to support it, it's there. I think they support actually YAML as well, but since I feel like most everyone does JSON over the wire, that's kind of their default. Okay, so what else can we show? So you remember that ABV was actually a numeric field. So if we just put garbage in here, we can see all that. A valid number is required there. So kind of all of the standard validation stuff you get pretty much out of the box. And a lot of that can just be built directly from the models. So you get the same validation here. Okay, what else is good to show? Oh, here's a good one, options. So because of the view sets we've set up, we support a lot of different HTTP verbs, but you can see here that the framework actually generates the different content types, the different HTTP verbs allowed, as well as all the different fields, whether they're required, whether they're read-only. We have choices, so it actually will enumerate those out. So if we go back, and this actually works on, let's go back to the main list. So if I just pick the first one, you can see there that the delete button shows up, but you can actually do an options there. You can do a put, same information. I guess I don't have the, oh, there we go, all the allow stuff. So yeah, it'll allow delete. I've never actually tried to do an HTTP head on it, but I'm sure it'll give you what you expect. Any questions about this? It's pretty cool.
So this is not a JSON schema, that's another type of document, right?
Right, this isn't a schema. This is just information about, yeah, what I guess it's their own format, really. There's plugins to support generating Swagger like the Swagger format, but I think it's like an older, like 1.2 version. We've actually played around with that and found it wasn't to our liking, but yeah, it is there. Any other questions? Yeah.
I don't know if you're still going to get to this, but you said there was a endpoint to actually place an order for the beer.
Yeah, that is next up.
Oh, okay.
Great segue.
Okay, wait, that's the other question. I'm not a plant.
Cool. All right. Demo time's over. Now we're on to ordering a beer. So there's a lot of things in the framework that kind of really like to have a database model backing, but there's plenty of functionality if you don't want that. So if you want to just define an API endpoint and maybe even still use serializers for validating your JSON input, but doing something totally different. So that's what we're going to do here. If we were like writing this out for real, maybe we would want to back orders in the database so that we would have them, but we're just gonna, shoot from the hip and just go with a serializer without a database. So here's how you would define an order. So I'm using here for specifying the beer a hyperlink related field. And so you saw that the beers all have a URL. So that just gets passed in to the order. And this field will actually take in that full URL and kind of pluck off the identifier and actually pull the model out of the database for use by the serializer. We want to do a quantity, and for this scenario, you can only order between 1 and 12 beers, which is maybe kind of lame, I admit. But you can see here that you can actually specify in a lot more detail how you want to validate the input, that the kind of stock model validation is not going to get you. A good example of that is actually email, right? I mean, well, Django does have an email field, doesn't it? Yeah. But there are more specific things for like number ranges, which, if you have a database column, it's a number, right? So it's you can specify very specific things that regex, etc. There's a long list of them. An alternative to doing the hyperlink related field is a primary key related field if you're just using primary keys as identifiers. They also have a slug related field, so if you want to be able to query a relation by a field that is a slug, you can use that and it'll kind of do the lookups for you behind the scenes. So here's the corresponding view. So we're not using a view set in this case because the view sets love to have a model that backs them. So in this case, this is a create API view, and that only defines the post and then delegates to this perform create method. So this piece is called so the information comes in, JSON, form, post, however, serializer gets the information. The create API view asks, is it valid? If it is, it then calls into this perform create. In kind of the standard view set, it's going to just save that model to the database and then kick back and say everything's good. In this case, we're going to do something totally different. We don't have a database model that's backing this, so we want to send out an email telling whoever posted this that it's on its way, and then we're going to deploy the beer drones. So then here's how to actually hook it into the Django URL patterns. So this is like much closer to the kind of stock Django way of doing it, where you just you define a regex for your URL pattern, and then you can just use this view and then the as view method on it. And that actually just hooks everything up. So this is an example of how you could actually use both view sets and views to kind of mix the level of abstraction for your API. I think their, preferred way of doing things is to use view sets everywhere and to do these high level. And that way it can kind of aggregate everything, and it can actually register this all of the URLs in the slash. So if you just actually do a get on slash, it will actually give you this JSON representation of here's everything that you've registered and what you can do, etc. But if you want to break out of that, here's hooks on how to do that. Still good? Everyone good? Questions? Cool. Maybe we can show that now again. Cool, so here's the order as endpoint. You'll note that off the bat, since I did a get with the browser, we actually got back a 405 method not allowed, because we did not provide a get endpoint. We're using that create API view, which only implements post.
This generic view you used to create this page, that was part of REST framework, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So you can see here that since we set up that hyperlink field, all of the beers that had been set up in the slash beers is auto-populated for us. And this is strictly a kind of the web endpoint niceties. I'm on the internet. I actually did set this up to work. Does anyone want to provide an email address? I think it has to be a Gmail address because I'm using the Gmail SMTP gateway. Thomas, how about you?
Can you spell my last name?
Oh man, you're not Thomas at? Does anyone have a short, easy email address? Ryan?
Yep.
Are you just Ryan at?
Yep.
Do you have anything unique in your database?
So this is not hooked into the database at all. So no, it'll just fire it off to whoever. You have email on your phone, right? You can actually get this. I'll fire it off.
Give me a minute.
All right. So I'm sending you 6 512 IPAs. You're welcome.
I will be to collect shortly.
Oh man, this is already taking too long. This is a demo fail.
Looks like you're not using celery.
I promise this worked before. I don't know. This may be a fail vote.
Are you on the wireless?
I am on the wireless. It actually might need to be a Gmail domain because I'm using the Google free no auth SMTP. Let's just go with that. And move on.
All right. That's all right.
All right. Where am I here? I think I'm at the end.
Okay, so let's just pretend that that went swimmingly and then Ryan got an email
Totally did.
and actually got awesome. Glad to hear it. Okay, so we've been using this for several microservices, WP Engine. For the most part, it works very well. It's I think it's a good 80-85% framework where it's, if you're not doing anything too crazy, it helps you out a lot more than it gets in your way. But there is a little bit of a learning curve, and I think I touched on this some, like where we talked about views and view sets and the routers and how they all work together, and none of that's too complicated, but it can take some digging, especially like I found myself kind of digging through the source code a lot to figure out, okay, well, if I really just want to do this one thing, I actually need to pick this one class that's kind of in the middle of the hierarchy and override this one method. That can be not intuitive, so that's kind of a big gotcha. This is nothing particular to the Django REST framework, but I feel like it can be overly coupled to your database, where you do a URL endpoint tied to a specific table, and you can tweak some things, but I think in general that's often a bad practice because you kind of start to expose your database a little bit too much, as opposed to thinking about your API kind of strictly as RESTful resources. So as you saw with the serializer, let's see, how can I say this? There's lots of different types of validation that are all mixed in with the serializer. So something like, is an integer within a certain range? That's kind of all lumped in with, okay, well, can I actually retrieve this object that's referenced from the database? So when I've done REST frameworks in the past, I typically treat those as two kind of separate validation layers, where there's a quick structural validation. Do they have the right fields? Are the fields conform to this regex, that kind of thing, before doing a data layer? And that way you can kick that out quick. That's all kind of lumped together in this framework. And I haven't found a real sane way to kind of separate them. Also, customizing the way that validation errors come back has been a bit of a pain. We've actually wanted to include like a machine readable code in addition to like a human readable message as part of validation. And that is not a easy place to hook into. We've actually had to do a lot of like pretty elaborate hacks just to get that to work. So I feel like, while the authors have a pretty good goal of being able to like hook in and customize a lot of the pieces, there's just some things that aren't there yet. And maybe that's just part of the age of the project. But and this is kind of getting back to the deeper class hierarchy, et cetera. As you saw, I mean, each of the classes that went into creating this whole API, were, I don't know, 5-8 lines long. So a lot of it is declarative, and there's a lot of magic that kind of happens under the covers. So for demos like this, where you're like, hey, you can only write a few lines of code, and then you get all this stuff, that's great, right? Until you want what it does to do something different. And then you kind of have to really start to dig in. So I mean, that's the trade-off probably with any framework, right? That it'll, but we found that in general, it gives you a lot of nice things, and you don't have to do a whole lot of customization. But that is kind of a drawback. Okay, so if anyone wants to play around with code for this, as well as the code for the talk, it's there. I don't know if we'll send it out, maybe put it on the Meetup minutes. Or
just go to the Meetup page and then put, like, just make a post and do it.
I'd like to have a GUI or something like that, so we can see order the beer.
Well, we tried to fire it off. Did Ryan get his email? I don't know.
Yes.
Totally got it. Totally got it.
Yeah, so we showed that, right?
If you just post something to the Meetup page, it'll send an email to everybody.
Okay, cool. I will do that. Question?
Yeah, could you, so I was actually really curious about the whole like decoupling of resources and models that you touched on. Like, I mean, so what you did there was basically pointed at a model and say, this is what I want my resource to be. So it's kind of like the example of like using model admin or model form in Django. But if you did want to actually maybe make it like a composite, you know, of models or something for partially related data, but partially not, how easy is it or difficult is it to do that?
Not too difficult. Actually, you can actually still use that model serializer if all you need to do is just tweak some things. But you saw in the example how, let's see if I can dig it up. So here we're not using any models at all, right? But you could just as easily do something like this, where you have a serializer that is completely independent of a model, and pull all the things out, pull all of the different fields out, all of the data, and distribute it across, save a whole suite of models or do whatever you like there. So here I was just using the example of sending out an email, but this could also be database interactions just that you control.
Got it. And so you would hooks into every one of the verbs?
Yeah, and so this is even a level higher. They do have a just view that just has get, post, just maps to all the HTTP verbs. So if you want to get down to that level, you can do it. Some of these generics that do, there's kind of a lot of different permutations. So an often one is create list. So that's where if you want to post to one, if you want to post to an endpoint to create a new thing or get the list of them, that's one of the generics. And so you can have a create and then a list. And you can put in whatever code you like. And you don't have to actually defer to the model or the model version of the serializer.
And each of the generic views is made up of mixins, so you can make your own create list, put together, you can make that your own view.
Right, yeah. Cool. Anything else? So you want to put in an order?
How many beers did you have?
Has to be a dry, huh?
Any three, the tub?
Yeah. I think I've got a.
What REST client do you recommend using for this?
So I guess I use, honestly, that generated one, when I'm just doing local dev is pretty nice. If you want to get away from that, I kind of go between, what's the Python HTTP? Is that it? That's the Kenneth Reed's. Yeah, that one's really nice for doing sort of a better curl, just command line type stuff. There's a bunch of Chrome plugins. Postman's one of them. There's one called Advanced REST Client. I think I use that one a lot.
Does the Browsable API not give you enough information to write an automatic client for the APIs that you have? So you would consume, this is the REST API endpoint, this is the resource that's there, here's the validation for the input, and then they have that automatically generated, or do you have to do essentially a curl?
So they don't really support out of the box like client generation. That is something that something like Swagger kind of tries to fit into that piece of it, and so we were eventually trying to go that route of, oh yeah, we'll just install the Swagger plugin so that will generate the Swagger documentation or the Swagger schema, which you can then plug into a client generator. But there was kind of too many hops, and none of them were really written to work together. So we found that kind of broke down. Honestly, what we do at WP Engine a lot is actually write an independent Swagger file and actually have contract tests that verify that. And that way it kind of lets you think about the API, in a outside, divorced from the framework or whatever technology stack you're using, and how would I like to see this look? Go ahead.
Are there any complications in adding authentication to either the actual API endpoints or the documentation browser?
No, I kind of glossed over that, but they've got pretty nice support for authentication, and they can use Django authentication, but then kind of have their own, similar to the rest of their design, kind of a layer on top of that. So it's been pretty good.
Do those generated pages do any the documentation, the doc strings or anything like that? Does it build anything? So you marked it all up with parameters and crap. You could use it as kind of an example.
I don't think that uses docstring stuff at all. That's a good question that I actually don't know the answer. If you can customize that, I mean, it's all open source, right? So I'm sure you can at some point, but I don't know if they have kind of a built-in pipeline for customizing it. I know that, so I didn't touch on using kind of sub-serializers. You can have a serializer that has what they call a sub-serializer that, is if this object has a list of these other objects, and they all need to be kind of validated and parsed together. The framework supports that, but I know that the generated HTML doesn't handle that as well, so it'll just say oh, the Browsable API doesn't support sub-serializers or whatever. So there are definitely limitations. Obviously the kind of no frills examples, everything works great, but it does kind of break down once you get to the edges. Anything else? Okay, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Justin.
All right.
So it is.
I totally forgot about this book.
Oh,
wait a minute.
There's more.
What's a fun thing that we can do to get this book away?
Guess how many beers are left?
15.
6 of them
What's your guess? 3 beers?
13.
How many beers are left?
13. 10.
Wait.
13.
10. Keep guessing, guys.
Okay, keep guessing.
10.
10.
10. Wait, I got a tenner here.
I'll go with 6.
6.
He said 6.
11.
Has anyone hit it yet?
13.
9.
15.
Does that sound right?
All right, then cutting it off. Okay.
0.
How many beers are there?
18.
Oh! I think there was a 13 back there.
13 got it.
What's the book?
Do you want the book? Let's start with that.
This is High Performance Python, which is an O'Reilly book.
I guessed it dead on.
I trust him. Dead on? Gets it.
All right, you got it then.
All right, claim your book. Anybody brave enough to give a lightning talk? Does anybody have anything they want to talk about? Or we just cut this early. Everybody grab another beer. Oh, well, July-thon at the beginning. We are going to have another hack day or work on day, possibly next month.
Yeah, but it's coming in space. It depends on space.
How did it go?
People liked it. There was a guy who went all the way from Houston and actually went to here. I'll stand up. My name is Jacob. I was asked in one of the Python meetup at some point. I raised my hand and I was volunteered to run a coding night. And last event I was here and I was looking for when to do it and things like this. We did it. The last one was actually there were two, but like the one that we handled is was in the third week. We're trying to make it such that it won't interfere with neither of the meetups, not too close to them. We're trying to do this in the third week of each month, but we're still looking for space, so we'll see, maybe Robert will help us with this. Look at the Meetup page, not at the web Python, maybe I should post it to the web Python as well, but look at the Python Meetup page and you will see some developments there. I called it an evening of coding. There was a turn of about 30 people, more or less about 55 signed up, but about 40 arrived. Basically, people just gathered around. We separated them into people who want to learn Python, those who know Python, those who do web stuff, and those who do analytics, and just people mingled. Apparently, some people liked this event, and there was actually one more last night, and also people came over. It was in a different place in South Austin, in Strasbourg. Look up for those events. There won't be talks there. So some people came to looking for a talk. There won't be a talk there. There may be some announcements. But the idea is that people can actually work together, compare their code for only a few hours. Many people show just IDEs and or all sorts of projects. I learned a lot, and I'm coding Python for many years. Each time I go to those, someone shows me something new. Not all things I use, but at least I learn new things. And people are generally helpful. So look up on the Meetup page, and Robert might give you more information. We're hoping to set up a space. It will be generally on the third week of every month.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. Anybody else working on anything cool? You got a joke?
Use the microphone. Yeah, stand up too.
Why didn't the skeleton do judo? He didn't have nobody to go with.
Excellent.
I bet you can beat that one.
I don't think I can.
All right. Well, I think that's roughly about it. We have a few beers left. Apparently 18 worth. 18. Is that Cokes too, or is that beer?
I think we're out of soda, yeah.
No. Okay.
Hey, call for speakers. We're always looking for people to come and share what they know. What we do. We meet once a month, and it's always good if there's somebody up there saying something. So, yeah, if you're interested, talk to me, talk to Robert. Even if it's something that's not really like fully baked idea yet, it doesn't have to be super formal, but you can talk to us and we can help you develop the idea or something. But yeah, we'd love to get more of everybody involved on that side of what And it's a great place to workshop and talk for. We say that every time, but pretty cool.
Yeah, there's less people here to be afraid of.
You're allowed to drink on stage.
Yes. We actually encourage drinking and talking. Yeah, so I guess we'll just clean up here. We have another 40 minutes or so before they will kick us out. Or we just head out early to the Chicago house. I think we'll go there, unless somebody has an even better idea. Chicago house is roughly 2 blocks away, southeastward, towards 35. It's like on, what street is that? I would say 7th and
Natchez?
It's either Trinity or San Jacinto, one of those. So head up. We'll all head together, so we'll hold hands. It'll be fun. We'll skip. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming.